What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Keith Champ Creed on Brotivation Sports. And, you know, for my longtime followers and listeners, you've seen me go from YouTube to public access, from public access to YouTube to Access TV, from Access TV to CNN, from CNN to Fox, from Fox to BT, from BT to Sirius, from Sirius back to YouTube, back to Fox, now to Sirius, now to Fox Sports Radio. And in those travels, I've met a lot of talented people, a lot of talented peers, a lot of gifted folks that had the gift of gab and the mind for the sport that they cover. But one of the most proficient, the excellence of execution, as I like to call them. You know, I saw the young guy hustling, and I knew that my time at Sirius was coming to a close. However, I knew that this gentleman that we have on the line right now would be able to usher in a new style, new swag, and new perspective to the fight game of boxing, and not only boxing, but sports and entertainment in general. And that's my man, Ak and Barak. What's going on, homie?
Yo, what's going on? Thanks for the great introduction there, man.
Yeah,
I'm
man,
not deserving of it yet.
Listen, look, I've been a lot of places, seen a lot of faces, man, and you know, the thing that you got that go-getting attitude. And like I said to everyone that was sitting there at the time, you know, especially the radio staff, I was like, yo, man, this dude, you know, I checked him out before. He got it. And now, look, y'all getting it. Y'all up at Sirius XM, Rush, and y'all do y'all thing, man. I'm happy for you, bro.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously you're doing your thing as well, and I respect your opinion in regards to the sport of boxing and MMA and, you know, just in entertainment, and as far as this sport, you know, these combat sports, you know, it's not just about the sport, man. You got to be entertained. So I'm here, man. Let's talk.
I'm glad I got you on, because here's the deal. Here is the deal. So UFC 200 went down this weekend, and you know, we've heard the comparison between, you know, boxing and MMA. It's been going on, you know, for almost a little over a decade now. You know, sometimes some people throw WWE up in there in the mix, whatever. But my thing was, from a business standpoint, I've consulted, I've promoted, I've done a lot of things in the fight game, and I used to always measure success in these terms. What were the, 1, pay-per-view buy rates, 2, live gate numbers, 3, merchandising and licensing, fees, opportunities, and revenue. And then when you got social media, you look at social engagement, right? But one thing that I never took a look at this until this weekend was fan happiness, and just fan happiness, fans being happy with the product. And it was a roller coaster week. I mean, this thing, UFC 200, could have went bad a million different ways. You know, and one significant thing that happened was the fallout with John Jones and a bad drug test, and you know, they had to change the main event once again after the main event was supposed to be Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz. You know, and it made me revisit this comparison between boxing and the UFC. And we were texting each other over the weekend, and we were talking about, you know, the fans and what we get, what we don't have. The day that they announced the replacement was Anderson Silva, taking the place of John Jones to fight DC, the fans were relatively happy. And on the boxing end, they announced that Triple G would be fighting Kell Brook in UK. And from what I saw on social media, the boxing fans were pissed.
They weren't happy. They weren't happy about it, right? Yeah. And while we were, you know, while UFC 200 was going on, man, I was at the Mandarin Oriental in Miami Kickback, and I wasn't stressing to go watch UFC 200. Not because I don't like MMA. I can appreciate any combat sport, man. I come from the fight game, and I was a former amateur fighter with plenty of amateur fights. I've traveled. I know what it is to be in the ring, you know, against an opponent. So I respect any fighter. And with that being said, as far as getting an opponent last minute, and I believe I touched on this when we had this conversation, that it's boxing fans, they've been, I guess, fickle for forever, for as long as I've known the sport. I've been involved in sports since 5 years old. Boxing fans are never happy, but they're loyal, and they'll tell you that they're not going to watch a fight. They'll call their friends and, oh, this is BS, man. In fact, it's funny. I have a chat group, a couple of guys that I speak to on a day-to-day basis in regards to boxing, and even one of the guys that's been following the sport as long as I have, he said, I'm done with boxing. This fight sucks. And an hour later, he's calling me back about some fight news and a bunch of other stuff. So it's just the nature of boxing fans. They're never happy. They're at the arenas, and they watch the fights. And now I'm not talking about casual fans. I'm not talking about the fan that just watches Mayweather Pacquiao. All right, I'm talking about from hardcore to, I guess, a normal boxing fan, so to speak. All of those, all those type of fans watch boxing, whether they like the fight or not. And in regards to getting an opponent, I didn't get into. I mean, boxers nowadays are getting paid well, especially the PBC guys, the Al Heyman guys. They're getting paid, big reward, not so much winning. Floyd Mayweather laid that foundation down. That's a book out of, page out of his book, and these young fighters. The Floyd is impressionable. These young fighters are gonna want to follow his lead. You can't blame those guys when you got like a guy like Al giving you $800,000-$900,000 for an opponent that no one knows. So you get spoiled. So these guys get spoiled. So no, you're not going to call a Daniel Jacobs last minute, to fill in for somebody. He doesn't have to do that. He knows that, he's going to have a date set and he's going to make X amount of dollars. I guess UFC fighters or MMA fighters, those opportunities don't come often. So if they get a call a week before a fight, they're going to jump on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be fair, I have friends on both sides equally. I've done business with people on both sides, but in terms of being an active fighter, I have an amateur background myself in MMA, and I know the preparation that it takes, but then I also know, like you said, those opportunities to get a fight, it is very limited. The thing that boxing does better than mixed martial arts, and I'll even just say UFC just for branding purpose so people can understand, is there's a system that you have. You have your PA, when I was starting out, they had PAL. I did boxing for a little bit. PAL, I had to move, couldn't do it, then I had to join a karate school. That karate school that I went to wasn't affiliated with any tournament like getting kids into Golden Gloves or getting them into Metros or, getting them into other amateur programs that could prepare them to be on, the Olympic team, what have you.
Right.
Like, we just didn't have that infrastructure, and that infrastructure doesn't lend itself to mixed martial arts today, even though the sport is very, very popular. The other thing that boxing does, like you said, and you can't dispute this, is the payout at the top levels. The payout at the top levels for a boxer is crazy. It's so much more.
It's astronomical.
Yeah. You look at a guy like Brock Lesnar, right? Brock Lesnar made $2.5 million for payroll pay for UFC because UFC likes to keep the payroll down and they like to reinvest the money that they do make into expanding the branches of their company, to which we'll touch upon when we go to why they
and that's the thing. I don't see that so much. I mean, you have a bunch of, it's saturated, MMA. Because you have UFC cards, every other day. There's probably a UFC, MMA card right now as we speaking somewhere. And it's, so it gets a little watered down, they're playing it, they're showing it at the bars, and you got these half-drunk people cheering these MMA guys on, but is that what you call branding the sport? I don't see them promoting these fighters, and let's not even get into the whole Reebok and endorsement deal. I mean, I feel like that company, I don't know if it's going to change now that it was sold. I haven't even dug into that yet, but you were saying?
Yeah, but, because I'm going to start off with everything that you said, even the fact that, I remember the UFC at one time, they only had 12 fights a year, 12 events a year. Then it went to 16, then it went to 20, then it jumped to like 33. Then it jumped to like 45, and I think this past year they had 50 plus events. To which, like you said, my thing was, man, it's watering down the product. They have about 500 fighters. The fighters aren't really getting paid that much more money. And then I had a problem with the trajectory of a career because, there's no, in boxing, you set up a fighter's career as a promoter because he is your money. You know what I mean? So, yeah, his first 5 fights are going to probably be against Ball, just so that way he can work on the mechanics, build his confidence, and get ready for the next level. Fight 5 through 10, you step him up a little bit. Same thing. You're not going to put him in. You're not going to throw him to the wolves right away until he gets maybe about.
Process. Yeah, it's a normal process for anything you do in life. If you're a pilot, you're not going to fly a 747 right away. You're going to start off with smaller planes. That goes without being said. But what you're saying is exactly what I try to explain as far as career. These, I keep saying UFC, but honestly, I don't know the difference. How many UFC cards are a year? You probably can tell me that.
Okay, all right. So if the sport, the sport is MMA, and the number one league is the UFC.
It's UFC.
So with MMA, you have about maybe 55 plus UFC events a year. Then you have the number 2 league is called Bellator, which they have a deal with Spike TV. They throw on about maybe 12 to 14 events per year. And then when you start looking at the number 3, 4, 5, it's a little bit sparse once you move up to the higher cable channels, but they do exist. And then there are a couple of lower level leagues, if you want to call it like the D leagues of MMA.
Right.
They're on the UFC app, which is the UFC Fight Pass, to which you can go in and look at fighters develop from the D League and get to the UFC level, to which that's one point that I think boxing, that's an atmosphere that boxing has yet to establish itself, for the simple fact that if I'm a fan and, let's say I don't know nothing about nothing. I don't know anything about fights. I don't know anything. And somebody said, hey, listen, I want you to learn about the history of mixed martial arts with the UFC. Here is my Fight Pass password. Go in there, sit in there, and just watch. I can see the entire history of UFC at the click of a button. I can't do that with boxing because the
boxing is too historic, though. It's just too historic. It's just so much. There's so much behind it. When at one point the mob controlled boxing, the mafia. Some people call it, and it's like baseball. It's a classical sport, obviously, but as far as like the UFC, all of the other companies, the other leagues and mixed martial arts, I don't even know if those leagues have their own champions or whatnot. How do you're a professional league in a mixed martial arts sport, but your title, do they have even titles in those leagues? Because people only respect the UFC titles from my conversations with MMA fans. The UFC champ is a real world champion. So it's just boxing doesn't have to deal with that. You can be a fighter that's signed to the most unknown boxing promotion company in the world, and if you get the opportunity to fight for a world title and you win a world title, you're going to be considered a world champ regardless of what company you're signed to.
Hold on, wait a minute. You mean to tell me with these alphabet soup champions that they got going on since the mid-'90s? Like, remember at one point in time when somebody had a belt? I remember this. When somebody had a belt in each division, you knew it was like the WBC or what was it back then? WBO?
There was three belts. There were 3 belts. There was the WBC, the WBA, and the IBF. Later on, the WBO became a respectable world title, and then the IBO. Because in Europe, that was like a Europe thing.
And the game changed when Riddick Bowe threw his belt in garbage because he didn't want to fight. He didn't want to fight Lennox Lewis, right?
Well, that was the rumor. He was being pressured. Some people say it was actually Lennox that didn't want to fight him. Nobody really knows the true story about that. But he made a statement and made news. It was, it was a champion saying, "Listen, I'm not going to be forced to fight a certain fighter or to meet a deadline. I don't need this belt. I'm bigger than the belt, and it was true. Yeah, it didn't make him any less of a draw for letting that belt go.
No, it didn't make him less of a draw, but that was kind of like the introduction to what we have now in terms of, there's no unified champ that the people that are casual fans, the person that say, hey, maybe I want to check out this boxing fight and find out who the champion is, like, it doesn't make it easy for the casual guy to come in and watch.
Keith, let me interject real quick before I forget. The reason why is because boxing is a star-driven sport. To be honest with you, the casual fan doesn't give a F about a title. They need to know the personalities, the fighters. When Mike Tyson was at his height, if he had vacated all his belts, he would have still been the baddest man on the planet. People just knew who he was. And yes, at that time, being the heavyweight champion of the world was a big deal. But now, in this day and age, and even then, it's a star-driven sport, and it's about what promotional company puts his fighter, gives his fighter the most exposure, whether on TV, endorsements, shows, movies, whatever you have to do to make your fighter popular. When he gets to a certain level, it doesn't matter what belts he has. Honestly, the belts, a casual fan knowing who's the IBF world champion, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, but it's not important. So as far as actually, they're becoming less important, and that's what Al Heyman is trying to create. And that's why when he first started putting the PBC shows on, is actually it was a rule that the fighters, even world champions that held world titles, couldn't walk to the ring waving their belts. Their handlers couldn't walk. That's why the fighters walk to the ring by themselves now. That's the whole.
Wait, why? Somebody mentioned that over the weekend. Why can't they hold their belts on the way to the ring?
Well, because he's trying to eliminate that. He's trying to take away power from these sanctioning bodies, from the WBC, the WBA. They hold too much power, and they're taxing these fighters, obviously, percentage of their purses. So Al is, he isn't happy with that, and he's really feeding that to his fighters. So he's trying to take away power from those sanctioning bodies that have been controlling boxing for so long. The WBC, which is the most popular, the WBA, and the IBF, and now the WBO, because that's considered a world title. So basically, he wants the new fans, the new wave, the new generation of fans that are watching the sport on free television to get to know the fighter and not worry about that belt. For that same reason that you said the casual fan is not going to know who's the IBF world champion, but you know what? He's going to know who Adrian Broner is. He's going to know who Keith Thurman is. He's going to know who J. Leon Love is. Even though I'm using him as an example because he's not a world champion, but he's on PBC. So that's his goal. That's Al Heyman's goal, to bring light to the fighter and not the belt that he's carrying.
And you know what? And I can't argue with you on the fact that, the pay-per-view market and the fight business, it is a persona, character-driven medium. You buy into the characters, you buy into the personalities. But one of the ways you buy into the personalities is by seeing what they're made of and by seeing what they do when they're tested. Now, I'm just going to go and just run down, just go from decade by decade real quick. In the 70s, you had, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Joe Frazier. Household names. You didn't have cable television. Everybody knew who everyone was. Transitioning from there, you had Hearns, the square, Hearns, Leonard, Hagler. Then you had Duran, Aguayo, Aaron Pryor. You move into the 80s, you got Larry Holmes still. He was slightly on the decline going into the 80s, but Mike Tyson emerged, and he changed the game because then, pay-per-view emerged to what it is today. 2000s, you had Roy Jones transitioning over with Oscar De La Hoya. Then carrying the load from Oscar De La Hoya, you had Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. And my guy, who I thought would be one of the top guys, but unfortunately it didn't work out that way, was Paul the Punisher Williams. Oh, I love that dude, man.
Right.
But now,
great champion, warrior.
Yeah, Mayweather's gone. We waited 5 years to have that fight with him and Pacquiao, and it was worth it from a business standpoint. We hear Pacquiao may be coming back. They're trying to figure out who his opponent will be. But the number one fight that everyone wants to see is Triple G and Canelo Alvarez. Now,
Right.
back in the day, it took long to make super fights, but now it's taking way too long to make these super fights. My question to you is, why do you think it takes so long? Because I understand the financial argument to it,
Right.
but you know, it just seems
But
that
that's the
time
only
moves
reason.
faster. You know, the time moves faster, and the time that you're taking, you know, all this time in between, you know, fans lose interest and they pick up other things. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, like, please explain to me, like, how come
it
that
hasn't
happens
happened
now?
yet. You see, what you're saying as far as fans picking up other things and losing interest, that's a perception. That hasn't really happened to big-name fighters. Big-name fighters haven't lost money, and obviously, you know, hence Mayweather and Pacquiao, it says it all. So, because people were saying the same thing with Pacquiao. You know, when Pacquiao fought, when the fight wasn't made between Pacquiao and Mayweather, they were saying the same thing. I'm done with this. Obviously, the numbers say otherwise. So the reason why fights take long now, in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 80s, there weren't that many stars in the sport, and it's different. You know, with inflation, with everything, it's the new millennium. Now fighters don't have to, they have more power. You know, like using Canelo Alvarez as an example. He is Golden Boy's cash cow, right? He is their number one guy. So he's holding power. Nobody's going to pressure him to fight anybody. Not Oscar De La Hoya, not Eric Gomez.
Then why did he try to bring Triple G in and talk smack after he knocked out Amir Khan and say, I got the balls, I'm going to do it? Like, why did he do that?
Because as a fighter, you have adrenaline rushing through your veins after knocking somebody out. After, thinking about people on social media or critics and reporters and media members talking about Triple G and saying that he doesn't want to fight him. So at that moment in time, I'm pretty sure I myself have said some things that, I wasn't totally sure, but at the time, I had to put that out there. It was a stage to put it out there. But when it's all said and done, when the adrenaline is down, when you're showered up and you're dressed up in your, in your Gucci suit and your shoes and you're talking with Oscar as far as business, you know what I mean? And then you're being pressured by a sanctioning body of WBC to give a date to fight Triple G. Then you realize, wait a minute, I have some power here. Like Triple G kept talking about the belt, and I said this. I put this out on social media when Canelo Alvarez vacated the WBC title, stating that he wasn't going to be pressured on when he was going to fight Triple G. He wanted it to be on his terms because he is the A side. Of that fight, which he is. Obviously, Triple G, his only pay-per-view matchup against Lemieux flopped. People say, I had some sources that said it did under 100,000 pay-per-views, but they're saying that it did over it, just so it didn't look so bad. But at that point, they were saying he's such a big star. Those numbers said otherwise. So basically, Canelo and Triple G, people wanted to see the fight, and Triple G kept harping about the belt. I want my belt. I want to unify the titles. I want to unify the titles. The truth is that he doesn't care about unifying the titles. He cares about the big fight and the big payday, which is Canelo Alvarez, because that belt means nothing to him now. It has no value. That goes to show you that the belts are losing value because I let go of the belt. Now what? Now what is Triple G? How much money is he going to make out of having that vacated title? Absolutely nothing. So the fighters, the belts are not holding that much weight anymore. Back in the day, you had to fight the biggest fights to make a dollar. Hearns had to fight Hagler. Leonard had to fight Roberto Duran. It's not, he wouldn't have made, $2 million, $5 million. That was huge money. That's like, 15, 20, 30 million now. So at that time, they had to. These fighters now, they don't really have to take big risks to make a good living.
So, but that's what the fans want to see. Listen, I'm a fan of Danny Jacobs from his personal story, to seeing Danny grow up. I'm a little bit older than him.
Right.
I've seen, Danny grow up, and I
Right.
know what he has to offer as a man. I know what he has to offer as an athlete. And I also know, most importantly, I know what he has to offer as a leader and as an example. And
Right.
I know, put in the right fight, with the right circumstances, with the right odds stacked against him, I know for a fact that many fans will flock to Danny Jacobs, but I will never see that because of leverage, because you're basically talking about fighters leveraging lower risk for maximum opportunity, which is fine. Right. I got no problem about that because the fight game don't owe nobody nothing, you know. But let me as a fan, it's the waiting game, and it just infuriates me.
You gotta look at it from a fan's perspective, and I understand that because that's our job. So the problem is this, that the fans, once boxing is over, right? Once it's done with, there's no pension in this sport. None of the fighters want to give up their purse to any of these, sanctioning bodies so they can hold a pension for them. There's no, health insurance. There's nothing that's going to take care of these fighters or their families after the sport. So if you fight to cater to the fans, none of these fans are going to help take care of these fighters when it's all said and done. None of these hardcore boxing fans, they want to see them in wars, they want to see them in the big fights. So, though you got to cater to fans, and look, we all know there was a hell of a fight a few weeks ago against, Thurman against Porter. On CBS, it was a hell of a showdown. Those are two big names in the sport. Kudos to Al Heyman for making that fight happen and it being a success. Over 3 million, viewers. The numbers, were pretty good that night. Nobody was beat to a bloody pulp. So it wasn't a Gaddy Ward, but it was an entertaining fight, and everybody wants to see a rematch. They want to see it again. So that shows you that boxing is still alive, and there's still great fights out there to make. But as far as Daniel Jacobs, they didn't. He personally, I had a conversation with him after that fight, and he personally told me that the fighter in him wants to fight Triple G right now. Yesterday, he wants to prove himself, and prove it to the fans that he belongs in a ring with Triple G, and he really feels he can beat him. But a business is always going to play a part in a decision. You can't make decisions just for the fans. You want them to keep the fans happy, but you got to think about all the mouths you have to feed. Like a good friend of mine, Kid Chocolate, Peter Quillen, is a personal friend of mine. We talk on the phone personally. He has his father, his brothers, his aunts. He has people down in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that he has to feed, take care of, put people in positions to make money, buying property. So you can't, everything has to have you have to calculate these decisions according to that, not just, let's jump in a ring with Triple G because that's what the fans want. And that's what I want the fans to understand.
It's basically business over war.
At this point it is. Yes,
and I'll never knock a man for making those decisions because I've been hit in the face before, I've been hit in the body before, and I know that shit hurts.
It does.
And, to do that for a paycheck, I will never knock a man for that. But in terms of the business of MMA, and we'll go to the business of UFC, I throughout times have been critical of what was the UFC, what were they doing with the money that they were making, because they were making a lot of money,
right.
as opposed to giving these big payouts to their fighters. And eventually what it boils down to is they took the resources that was generated from their pay-per-view revenue. Of course, the owners, they had different business interests that they had to take care of. They had a huge loan that they probably paid back with interest last year. They took in a lot of revenue. They figured out, I'd say maybe about 2 years ago, that it can't be league over individual. It had to be the individual over the league, thus putting in promotional money to Conor McGregor, to Ronda Rousey, to Cain Velasquez. They figured that out later on, and it came to their benefit. And what they were doing was they were establishing the infrastructure so that way eventually they could sell it to what they sold it for about a few weeks ago, but the ink dried and they announced it on Monday. The UFC sold for $4 billion. The UFC, as a brand with its roster of 500 fighters, production facilities, etc., is equally as much as the Star Wars franchise, right? Pretty much, because that's what Disney bought, Star Wars from George Lucas for, right? So now I'm looking at this, and I know that fighter pay is definitely going to go up because that Reebok deal, that's going out the window.
Yeah,
you're gonna
thank
start
God
to
for the fighters.
Yeah, you're going to start to get blue chip, you know, and that was a misstep on their behalf. I understand why they did it, but I don't think I would have did it with Reebok. But now you're going to start to get blue chip sponsorships in now all over the place, right?
Right.
And I'm talking about some high-level sponsors. So that will be added to the fighter payroll. But in terms of fan happiness, the UFC was always war and then business, as opposed to business over war. And I just think that the product right now, as where we stand, I just think that boxing might have lost a step, man.
I mean, look. I mean, I respect, you know, that opinion. Obviously, plenty of people feel like that, especially, you know, MMA fans. You know, you being one of them. And not to say that you don't appreciate boxing, but trust me, I get that a lot. I've had so many callers and, you know, on social media, people express themselves about MMA. Boxing, I'm thinking about, put it to you like this, and just to end my topic.
Well, hey, we're having technical difficulties here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, can you start over again? You mentioned this. I think you were talking about Anthony Joshua.
Yeah. So, just to touch on, kind of try to end up what I was discussing as far as Daniel Jacobs and Al Heyman guys. Charles Martin fights for $5 million in the last 2 rounds with Anthony Joshua, which was actually a joke. It was a complete joke in the ring. He didn't go in there to win at all. So when fighters sit down and go to the table, you know, and they see that, it's hard to offer a guy $1 million to fight Triple G when a guy like Charles Martin gets paid $5 million to fight Anthony Joshua, who has 16 fights and just became a world champion, opposed to fighting a middleweight that is destroying everybody with 20 title defenses. It's difficult. So fans they have to understand that. You know, you can't. If you've been busting your ass, you know, and a guy comes out of nowhere. If you're working, if you're a fireman, and you've been on a, you know, with the city for years, and a guy comes out of nowhere and just bumped up the captain, you're gonna have a problem with that. So, you know, fighters base it on what other fighters are getting paid. But I don't want to harp on that too much. That's what it is. You said it best. It's a little bit business over, you know, the war over war. Glory. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. As far as UFC, I don't know. Floyd Mayweather is a perfect example. When he people say he's the big draw, but I always say he needed a big dancing partner to be able to generate a lot of numbers. He needed it with, you know, him and Oscar De La Hoya. They're the ones that broke the record to that, you know, and it was Oscar De La Hoya was a big draw, you know, and so on and so forth. After he needed big names, you know, Shane Mosley, obviously Manny Pacquiao, who I don't think anybody's ever going to beat that record. Not in my lifetime. I don't see anybody, you know, any boxing fight selling over 4.4 million pay-per-views. But that right there, that just happened last year, right? That what was that? Last year, right, in May. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, I lose track of that. So that fight right there speaks volumes, man. And I know, and I hate to keep bringing that up, but UFC is popular in bars. The fans that are going to the fights in Vegas, they're happy. Yes, they're happy. But in terms of revenue, do you really think, if you add it up, it's a new sport, obviously. It's been around, what, 20 years or so?
Yeah, about 21 years now.
Yeah, 21 years. So it has a long way to go to catch up to a classical sport like boxing. And when Ward Kovalev happens, Triple G, Canelo happens next year, we can revisit this and I'll pretty much explain with the numbers on how UFC has a long way to go to catch up to this classical sport, because what happens is you have to make fans wait. You have to build up these fights. That's why boxing has very few fights, pay-per-view fights a year. Most of the time they do great numbers. You have to create anticipation. You can't flood these fans with a bunch of free fights. And that's why people saying that Al Heyman, I don't want to get into the details, but how much money he spent. He spent a lot of money, which is not his money, from hedge funds.
Yeah, that's
a whole nother show.
Another episode, bro.
That's a whole nother
Hold on,
show.
you want to know something crazy? Yeah, I'm going to tell you something crazy about that. And I'll just say it on there because it happened now. When all of those meetings were happening, whatever, right? Like, it was literally happening right under, in the same building where everybody records over at Sirius. So I'm hopping, I'm hopping up and downstairs, going on the elevator, and then I'm figuring out like what the master plan is, and I'm like, oh shit, I was about to do something crazy. And then fast forward to where we are now, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at the way it's structured, and I'm asking myself, what would have to happen for PBC to be sold for $4 billion? Like, that's the question I was asking myself yesterday morning. But
but PBC just started. I mean, UFC has been around, so it had time to build up to this point where it's worth $4 billion. But you said boxing's been around for a long time too. Under 110. Yeah, no, but you said PBC is something different. It's still boxing, but like you said, UFC has different leagues. Boxing, it is one. It's one thing, but there are a lot of other businesses attached to it, a lot of big promotional companies. But PBC, he tried to create something different. That's why he wasn't showing the belts. It was professional sport, but I would say it's something like what the UFC did. They created a company. So that's what Al was trying to do, to create this company. But you don't fix something that's not broken. People keep saying that boxing was dying. Man. Boxing, obviously, is a sport. It has a cult following. Those fans are always going to exist. Yes, they can tweak a couple of things to create some interest, for the young people, for the younger people, the new generation. And I believe some people have done it. They haven't done it to the extent that I feel like it needs to be done. But it's big fights are still going to generate a lot of money. So what Al tried to do was saturate the market with free boxing, just like MMA does. And I think there were occasions where there were good fights, but I think he did too much. He spent too much money on production, lights, WWF style entrances, and that costs money. People have to get paid. Venues have to be paid. Tickets have to be sold. So what Al's idea was, Al figured that he could spend a lot of money for the first 6 months and create a wave and make the sport so popular that there'll be so many viewers on free TV, where they get tons of money from advertisements, and they'll start generating some money. But the people that invested in that hedge fund, where Al got all his money from, what I mean? They're suing the hedge fund because they're having no return on their investment yet. And PBC has been going for over a year now.
And let's leave it right there, because they're not happy, and we started talking this conversation about happiness, right? So
exactly.
So we'll leave it there full circle. My friend, listen, we will continue this discussion later on. I mean, let's try to build a symmetry here. You can come on and talk about it. I'm more than willing to, hang out with you guys and talk about it.
No doubt.
Man. So thank you, Ak from Ak and Barack. Tell Barack I said what up. This is
Yes. Make sure you guys listen in on Monday, man, on Rush 93 Sirius XM. I'll be co-hosting with Randy. So keep it locked, and you guys can follow me on Ak and Hitch Boxing on Instagram, is where I'm most active.
And
thanks for having me, Q-Champ.
Tell them the station number and the time that they can find the show as well.
It's active fights every Monday and Friday, but I'm usually on. I believe I'm on this Monday from 6 to 8 p.m. Rush 93 on Sirius XM. No, I'm sorry. It's the 25th. The following Monday, I'll be on the 25th. Following Monday, and we should be doing a post-fight show for the Crawford Postal fight right after the fight. So just look out, man. Just look me up on Instagram. I put all my information on there. Ak and Hitch Boxing.
All right, and definitely, fans, I definitely put a post of his promo stuff on my social media at Champ Creed. And thank you for listening to Brotivation Sports Radio on Fox Sports Radio 1340. I'm going to holler at y'all later.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.